she was getting ready to do a tour with Bob Hope in the Middle East for one of his Christmas shows, and she just had shots, and her arms had bandages on it. And I said, well, Brooke, you take pictures all your life. You go, I hate doing this. Even taking a Polaroid, she didn't want to do it. But she was the sweetest, nicest person. And I remember they said she'd never go anywhere without her mother. Total BS. She was in there by herself, drove, and, whatever.
Welcome once again to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs, and we appreciate you subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, do it right now. You'll get some updates. We got fresh interviews every couple of days, as well as some cool features. And tell your friends to do likewise. And we appreciate you doing that. And the voice you just heard was that of Artie Breyfogle. And we promised you we'd get to his time in Los Angeles. And here's that conversation. Yeah, I remember, you were on Century Cable all the time, and just like, the cost, it's low. The response, it's been fantastic. Those are the two lines I remember the most from that commercial and stuff. And I remember Carol O'Connor even advertised his restaurant, Carol O'Connor's Place, which was either in Beverly Hills or on the border of Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
And, he even sang in the, he's like,
they went out and did a commercial. We shot a spot with them, and I remember they closed out the room. I wasn't involved with the production on that one, but sure, I remember that very well. I mean, that was just like, the Carol O'Connor's restaurant. Big deal. I mean, it was L.A. It was Beverly Hills, show to the Central. I remember, Ronald Reagan watched me all the time doing those promos. The funniest thing about doing that kind of stuff, because I would get on, and I was always a believer in advertising our own product. I look today at people like Cox Cable, the big corporations and that, and they have all these slick ads, and they don't even let you know that what they're actually saying is call us and you can do advertising with us. I mean, it's horrible marketing. The bottom line is I get on there and say, I'm the guy. Call me and my people. We're coming out. I did this commercial where we were all on a beach, and I played the theme from what's the movie where they ran on the beach, the won the Academy Award in England. The guy's running, da-da-da-da-da, that thing. And slow-mo and everything. And this is our team. We can get it done for you. And I'd introduce each salesperson, put them on air, show their picture. So when they went out, they became little stars with everybody. And that helped promote, and we went from $660,000 in advertising, which was a joke, Century Cable. Once again, we were being actually owned by the guys out of Long Island, Jimmy Dolan, and we basically were part of C&I, Cable Networks Inc. And when I left, when he canned me, we were doing $3.5 million in about 3.5 years. So from 660 to 3.5 million. So it went pretty well.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because when I took acting classes about 20 years ago, one of the things they said was when it came to commercials, people like your average Joe Blow. They don't want pretty. For instance, he shows a headshot of a guy, and he's like, okay, this guy looks like Brad Pitt. And he shows the headshot and tosses it aside. Okay, so what? A lot of guys look like Brad Pitt. They picked up a picture of a kid who had kind of a big nose, buck teeth, gelled hair, wearing a Superman T-shirt. This guy is making a lot of commercials right now. He's got so many callbacks. He's now hired a manager to tell the agent which ones he will and will not go on.
Okay. Yeah, it's the old story. Let Mikey eat it. Mikey wasn't a good-looking little kid, but everybody remembered Mikey. People relate to people. That's what sales is all about. That's what life is all about. Eyeball to eyeball. We would still be in caves if there wasn't salespeople that went out and gave the guy down the street some deal for the little hammer he made that he could, chisel out a wheel. The bottom line is that people forget that. And today, the younger generation, they got no idea. You look at commercials today, they don't sell crap. I look at commercials, I can't even read the logo name. It's got the same color background as what it is. I don't even know what the product or service is. And it's just insanity. I look at it and I just cry. It's just the lack of decent, intelligent, just one-on-one simple marketing has left us. And it's sad. Hopefully it'll ring around and come back. I don't know. But it was that simple. That's why Arthur Godfrey worked. He was a creep in real life. People hated him. A lot of people didn't like listening to him, but the people that did, they did listen to him. And they bought his crap. Lipton tea and all the other stuff. I mean, that's how it works. And that's what I did. I did a bunch of corny commercials, different hats. I played Santa, all this other stuff. I got called for 2 movie roles to go out. It would have changed my life if I got them. Hot Shots was the name of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
I almost got that role to be the captain. And the guy they hired, I go, man, I was better than that guy, but whatever. And I remember I was at a house in Santa Monica, 3 blocks from the cliff. And turned out it was a casting office. And one of the guys there was from Airplane. And I went in and did the read, and he hated me and whatever. See you later, great. Before I went in, there was a lady next to me, young. She was just barely over a teenager, and they said, "Would you two guys go against the wall? I want to take Polaroids." And we took the picture, and it was oh God, what's her name? The one that dated Michael Jackson.
Lisa Marie Presley.
No. Oh. Before that, the one that did the movie Nude as a young prostitute in New Orleans. Her mother allowed her to do a movie, and then she was in the movie On the Island Naked with Willie Ames.
Brooke Shields.
Brooke Shields, yeah. She was getting ready to do a tour with Bob Hope again, in the Middle East for one of his Christmas shows, and she just had shots, and her arms had bandages on it. And I said, "Well, Brooke, you take pictures all your life." She goes, "I hate doing this. I hate." Even taking a Polaroid, she didn't want to do it. But she was the sweetest, nicest person. And I remember they said she'd never go anywhere without her mother. Total BS. She was in there by herself, drove, and, whatever. And it ended out she couldn't go on the tour because they'd let no women go to the Middle East. They made an exception and let Bob take his wife, Dolores, and that was it. So.
I heard about that because they're very sexist in the Middle East, just to put it bluntly.
It was crazy, in the 80s. So. Well, anyway, that in a nutshell, I mean, it just... on the side, I sold the cars and came up here and worked a television station here for a while, and then ended up getting into Lotus Broadcasting for 14 and a half years, helping create a sales crew for their sports. We had 2 stations, and sports is pretty popular here in Las Vegas. So that for the last of my career in media. And then did some Uber driving after I turned 65, and then 6.5 years as a tour guide on top of the big bus out of London. And we were up there. I'd worked like 6-7 days a week, 110, 114 degrees, and meet all the people. And you do 2-hour tours all day long, 3 to 4 a day, and then a night tour after that. So anyway, about 7-8 months ago, they said, "You're out of here." And they ended up going AI and used computers to replace all the live guys. I was ready to move on,
Now, KWKW was a longtime home of the Los Angeles Dodgers in Spanish. It was owned by Lotus Broadcasting.
Correct.
Now, the stations that you were in charge of, were those in Spanish too?
They had one, it became one, but originally it was ESPN, and we had local guys, really good guys. We had a lot of touts from Vegas, obviously, doing shows during the day. And then we took a lot of the late feeds, and then we took the sports radio network out of Chicago. And, God, what was his name? He was their big guy. He ended up working for us here in Vegas. He was a rough guy to deal with. But, radio. You were in radio,
Oh, yeah.
Most people in radio were psychotic. I mean, that was just the bottom line. And I came from a little bit different roots, but still, I was creative. I could be a little weird at times, but I wasn't, a thief or a liar. Where most of the people you're working with were. It was just the way it was. The problem with the industry over the year, what happened is it just kept, when Reagan deregged, that's when it all changed. You went from everybody owned, if you owned 2 stations, that was super rare. Usually that was an AM-FM combo that had started with a newspaper, like up here, KMJ, AM and FM, and a lot of other markets around the country. And then when all of a sudden you could own, 4, 5, 6 stations, and you only had one traffic person instead of 5 or 6 people making a living. That's when it all changed. And what they ended up doing, we would go to little junk radio stations anyway. I was lucky I found one in L.A., right from where I was living. A lot of guys would have to drive to Bakersfield every weekend or San Luis Obispo or whatever to do a gig, way down in Orange County when there was nobody down there. And the bottom line is that you use that as training. I listened to all these guys. I learned from them. It was like an open book on how you do radio, right, wrong, or whatever. And that's how you grow in the business. And, of course, I realized at KSJTV when I was up there in the traffic department, I looked one day and I said, who owns these cars in the little parking lot we have in the back here? They go, oh, those are all the ad sales guys for television. I said, tell me more. And that's how I got into advertising, coming out to Las Vegas, selling radio time when I was 20 years old.
You know, what's interesting is that the Telecommunications Act of 1996, passed by both members of Congress, bipartisan bill signed by President Clinton, was what really kind of got the ball rolling as far as just a radio company can own up to 8 radio stations in one market. That's just, it's crazy.
Yes, it was, and that's what little did I know back then. You know, I have a bunch of Facebook pages. The one I have is Los Angeles Golden Radio Days, where I put on a lot of air checks and tales and stuff from around. I'm looking at a page right now, and a picture of the KGIL Skywatch button, you know, from out there, and all the old memories of LA radio, a lot I knew of, and stories I knew from people there. And then the other one I started, I've got almost 6,000 people on it, and it's called Say Goodbye to Radio. And guys talk about their old days, what they used to do, show pictures of old boards, and how we used to do it back in the old days. Do you know what a slip cue is?
I'm too young to remember that one.
Oh, God. If you had a pad on your turntable and it was felt, you would cue the record and hold the record on that felt, and the turntable would be spinning. You're talking in your spot, and instead of starting the button up, you get a potential wow or whatever. You cued it back a quarter turn, and you let it go, and that was a slip cue, and you could roll right away with a tight record and coming right in.
Wow. I remember in broadcasting class at Pasadena State College, they said, okay, this is what you do. You take the record right over here, and then you cue it back a couple of inches in order so that way when you start it up, it doesn't go rip.
That's right. And then occasionally, you know, you listen to the station and it goes, you know, the record would start up and you go, well, the engineer screwed that one up. And of course, most guys who were in radio for even the old days when you started off as combo, you did everything yourself. You did your own engineering. And everybody go, well, you know, how are you able to do that? Well, after a while, it got boring. I mean, you were so good at it. And you just sit there in between records, and we get a few people calling our radio station up there in the Panorama Towers. And I was always good, and he wanted to listen to something. For me, it was a thing. I had to get it on within about 10 minutes. And I'd go and I'd find the album. We played like 3 in a row. It was not elevator music, but it was almost as crappy and weird. But I would play, you know, Elvis, Gerald Scatting. Next thing you know, you listen to Herb Alpert. I mean, you know, it was just the way it was. And interesting formats, which was no format. That's why I'd have to go to the guys and go, hey, man, you got to at least do this. You can't come in and play rock and roll here. The owners won't allow it. Which, sadly, they should have. We would have been an entity in the L.A. market because there's so little action going on. This is before the days of, right about the time KPPC was getting started in Pasadena in the basement of the church there. Yeah,
Big Daddy Tom Donahue.
Yep, yeah. Never met him. Literally met him, you know. And so many people I was very fortunate also through SC. I got to go to KMPC, and there was a guy named Jack Angel. And after we did the tour one time, I was in there, and Johnny Magnus, met him. And I ended up talking to him years later on a telephone call, and he's the sweetest guy in the world.
He is.
And then Angel, I'd go in and, you know, sit there and watch him 3, 4, 5 hours, just sitting behind him, watching him. And KMPC had an engineer 24/7 on the other side to roll the stuff out. Angel ended up doing a lot of voiceovers for cartoons and commercials and all that other stuff.
I worked with Johnny at the Music of Your Life radio network, and he was a great guy to talk to. Gary Owens was there too, so too was Wink Martindale. So Johnny and Gary were the two I spoke to the most. And I remember Johnny one time said, look, there's over 300 million people in this country. If 5 million people bought the record, that means the other 295 million thought it was crap.
Yeah. But Magnus would sit there and had a little tensor lamp. Remember those we had in college with a little elbow thing, and you could turn the light and flip the switch down below. And he had that, and that was about it. So it was like a very dark nightclub. That was his gig at night. And he'd play the records, and he'd do weird things. I mean, I loved listening to him. He'd play the whole, you know, side of an album from the movie Seventh Dawn, Resort to Lonnie's music. I mean, you'd learn a lot listening to him. I mean, he was into jazz, he was into soundtracks and all that kind of stuff. But I never got to meet him, unfortunately. I mean, you know, the best line ever in radio is a whole lot of shivering going on. He played that right after playing Mission Impossible. You know? Hey, a whole lot of shivering going on. And then years later, I meet Ken Levine through the internet, and Ken Levine was one of the big writers for MASH and Cheers and all the shows, and been around for a zillion years. And he was fortunate. He was one that had to go to Bakersfield weekends and do stuff, and then he got on in L.A. radio. He was on his
Beaver Cleaver.
Yeah. And he played that character. And then he wanted, after he had written MASH and some other stuff, he wanted to do radio announcing for baseball games. And he had the same kind of theory as me. What he would do, he'd go to that top fourth deck at Dodger Stadium, and he'd sit there with a cassette or a little reel-to-reel, I think, in the old days, and he'd call the game. And all the people around him got to know him, and they'd applaud after a big play, and he'd hold the mic out and do all that. And he learned that, and he got into some. I think he started somewhere back east, some with AAA club or something. He ended up calling Seattle Mariners for years. He did the Dodger pregame show for years. Ken Levine, and he did that until finally he just said, "I'm done with that." But he just loved broadcasting baseball games. He had that drive. And of course, like me and anybody in L.A., we were so lucky. We grew up with Scully,
Chick Hearn,
and all the, from all the way down to Dave Niehaus. The only two that were the worst. I remember when the Angels came to town, and we got to see more than, 9 games a year, because O'Malley would only give you 9 games. Mm-hmm. They were the ones out of town in San Francisco. And, of course, we never got any of the CBS Saturday broadcasts because we were blacked out as a market, the size and everything else. And there was a team here. But bottom line is, it was such a dream and a jewel to listen to these guys. When I was a little kid, I put, the little 1-2 RCA radio right in my headboard, turn it up, and listen, 10:30 till the game ended, listening to Jerry Doggett and then. But the two guys, when they came in and started the Angels, Buddy Blattner and Don Wells, to me, they were the worst guys ever in the history of radio sports broadcasting. Blattner came from St. Louis, I think, and Wells, I don't know where he came from. And they were just horrible. And they would do the TV, which they would do from Palm Springs, spring training games in full color on Channel 5. The reason they did, because Artie on the team, and he also won that. Met Artie twice. He was drunk both times at like 11 in the morning. But, that was Gene Autry. Lots of great stories about him.
And, of course, Gene Autry was also the longtime owner of the California Angels baseball team. And next time, Artie's going to share a cool story about a confrontation or maybe a conversation with the longtime owner of the Brooklyn and Los Angeles Dodgers.